those who are joining us on spot and those joining us online. Let me just welcome you all. Trust that you have had a great day so far. And as we gather on this day of covenant, that this day that on which we renew the covenant that Yahuwah made with us. I hope we are all here to renew such covenant. And so, the covenant is for us to guard His Torah. And as we guard His Torah, we will remain His people. He will remain our Elohim, our provider, our protector. And we will be His children, His people. So that's the plan for today. We may have missed up sometime last year. Up to now, we want to renew. We want to put things back in order as we stand on this very, very special day. In some quarters, for some persons, this is one of the most important days of the year. All right? And today I want to just talk a little about Shavu'oth. I'm going to talk about it. I could have asked you, what do you understand about Shavu'oth? Time may not afford us to take a few comments. But I want to talk with us on four things. We want to look at the name of this feast. We want to look at the meaning of the feast. We want to look at when the feast is to be observed, because mark you that this feast is crowded with some uncertainty as to when the feast is to be celebrated. While the other feasts, all of the feasts and other appointed times have a specific date attached to them as to when, and no one can deny or argue that. There's no date attached to this particular feast. Right? The only issue with the other feasts on appointed times, when it comes to dates, is when it has to do with the year. You know, when persons start the year and all those things. But dates are attached. The first day of the 14th day of the first month, or the first lunation, or the first new moon. These dates are attached to them. But specifically, but for this one, so this is the only feast, the only appointed time in which there is no date attached to it. But we are called to count from a particular date, a particular time, a particular event, which in itself also has some contradiction that we want to look at, touch just a little bit. And as time goes by, we do some more on that. And then now we want to look at this day in history. What are some of the things that happen on this day in history? This big day, this bashment day, huh? So four things, then we are finished. And we can renew the covenant and thing, and then we can go about our business. But so let's start with the first one, the name of the feast. All right, the term Feast of Weeks, Chag Shavuot, is found 4 times in the scriptures. 4 times, all right? Found 4 times in the scriptures. Though more than 4 references are made of it, or about it, the term itself is found 4 times so far. Remember now that as we study and as we present, we are presenting based on what we know so far, and so it could be that as time goes by, there may be addition to what we we have presented, what we have studied. There might be, could be some corrections. So I said so far 4 times. So look at the 4 times that the term Feast of Weeks, or Chag Shavu'oth, is mentioned. So first is Exodus 34 verse 22. You shall observe the Feast of Weeks of the first fruits of wheat harvest, and the Feast of Ingathering at the year's end. So here we are told in Exodus, before Leviticus, where the feasts were outlined, 23. We are seeing in Exodus where Yisra'el was told that they should observe the Feast of Weeks. Is not only a celebration of the wheat harvest, but there's another thing to it as it comes to the meaning. Right? And maybe the most prominent meaning of the feast. But we'll get there. So that's Exodus 34 verse 22. We have Deuteronomy 16, 9, 10. 7 weeks you shall count unto thee. So I told him to count 7 weeks. Not 7 weeks, then 50 days. Begin to count the 7 weeks from such time as you begin to put the sickle to the corner, and thou shalt keep the Feast of Weeks unto Yahuwah, your Elohim, the tribute of free offering. Right? Deuteronomy 16, verse 16. 3 times a year shall all your males appear before Yahuwah, your Elohim, in the place where he has chosen, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Tabernacles. So this text outlines 3 feasts. Remember now, brethren, how many feasts do we have in the year? Yisra'el has how many feasts? 3 feasts. All the other appointed times, they are appointed time. They are moedim. They are not feasts. 3 feasts. 1, the Feast of Unleavened Bread. 2, the Feast of Weeks. 3, the Feast of Booths or Tabernacles. The others are other appointed times that are not feasts. And the 3 feasts are also appointed times. So you want to get that. Right? These are basic things that you need to know and understand. And the final text is 2 Chronicles 18, verse 13. Even after a certain rate every day, offering according to the commandment of Moses on the Sabbaths, on the new moons, or renewals, and on the solemn feasts, 3 times in a year. Even the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Tabernacles. So you realize that the Feast of Weeks was not mentioned in the feast chapter, the term itself, right? Hence I say there are other references to this feast, but only 4 times the term itself is mentioned. And the text would have said to you based on, look at the text, it says, offering according to the commandment of Moses and Moshe. Marsha. The commandment of Moshe. This speaks directly to where the command was given, right? As to what is to be done. Very important. So look in Leviticus 23, you find that in verse 15, 16. So here is the command that was given to Moshe. You shall count unto you You shall count unto you from the morrow after the Shabbat. And this is where some problems come in as to which Shabbat we should count from. So we still have some things to sort out. We should count unto you from the morrow after the Shabbat, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. 7 Shabbats shall be completed. And even unto the morrow after the 7th Shabbat shall you number 50 days. So 50 days must be numbered from the time you start the counting to the morrow after the 7th Shabbat. There are some persons who understand and teach this text to say that you must count 7 Shabbats first, and when you finish counting 7 Shabbats, you must count 50 days in addition, which would have ended up giving you 99 days. So there are some persons who would have not yet celebrated Shabbat. Another, how many days are left for them to celebrate, because they think that this text is saying, count 7 Shabbats, then you add on 50 days after that. That's not so. Right? It's not so. Because the name is the Feast of Weeks. So you must have the weeks. Right? And very important to the second meaning of the week, of this feast, is the issue of sevens. 7 sevens has to do with covenant and oath and agreement. But that is for another time. Now, in the New Testament, the term Feast of Pentecost is used in the New Testament. So the same feast is called Pentecost. And we see that in Acts 2 verse 1. When the day of Pentecost was fully come, basically when the 50th day was reached, they were all with one accord in one place. And Pentecost, this could be used to, to debunk the issue about counting 49 days and then 7 Sabbaths, then you put on 50 days on it. That would be crazy. So this is showing 50 days. Pentecost is 50. Talking about 50 days. Acts 20 verse 16. For Paul had determined to sail by Ephesus because he would not spend the time in Asia. For he hasted, if it were possible for him to be at Jerusalem the day of Pentecost. Again, the Feast of Weeks. Right? But they call it Pentecost in the Greek. And then you have 1 Corinthians 16:8. But I will tarry at Ephesus until Pentecost. So 3 texts we see there in New Testament about this same feast. It's called the Feast of Pentecost or Pentecost. Alright, Pentecost is Pentecoste, which means 50th. That's basically what it means. 50th. Alright? And would not carry the proper meaning of the feast if you use Pentecost. Alright? Because it only means 50. Well, when you look at the meaning of the feast, then you see where Pentecost would have been lacking if it's being used to refer to this particular feast, this day. Right? But we'll get there. Right? So while the New Testament tried to maintain the names, and watch this carefully, because the New Testament maintained the name of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, they maintain the name of the Feast of Booths, the Tabernacle, but they did not maintain the name of the Feast of Weeks. Right? So we know, and we need to understand that this name, Pentecost, is not an appropriate term or terminology, a word to use to refer to this feast because of its importance and because of its meaning. It's very important that we look at that. All right. So, what historical event in the Bible lead to or is attached to the celebration of this festival? In fact, all the festivals, all the feasts. What? And you can tell me quickly. The feast of unleavened bread. What historical event is attached to or would have led to the celebration of the feast of unleavened bread? Quickly now. Let's see if you're learning. What historical event? Because of this, then you must celebrate the feast of unleavened bread. What is it? Huh? All right. So yes, correct. What about Booth? The feast of Sukkot, feast of Tabernacles. What event, historical event, would have been attached to this? Booth? No, Booth not. No, Booth. Unleavened bread is Booth. Unleavened bread is leaving Egypt. So what is Booth? Yes. No. Remember of what? Huh? In the wilderness? Awesome. Redemption? I thought redemption was freedom. Was unleavened bread. What is Booth about? Why was Yisra'el told to celebrate, to observe the Feast of Booth? The Feast of Tabernacles. The Spirit dealt with them. Not so fully correct. Alright, well look at the text then. Let's look at the text. Let's look at the unleavened bread first. Exodus 12 verse 17. You shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, for in this same day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore shall you observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. So why do we keep the feast of unleavened bread? Why are we commanded to keep the feast of unleavened bread? Because in the same day I have brought your armies out of the land. Therefore you should observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. So unleavened bread is attached to the deliverance of Yisra'el from bondage. Not of sin, but bondage. Right? That is unleavened bread. Let's look at Exodus 23 verse 15. Still unleavened bread here. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I command thee in the time appointed of the month of Abib. For in it you came out of Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. Again, because you came out of Egypt, on this day, which date did Yisra'el leave Egypt? What date? The 15th. The 15th of the first renewal. That's the 15th. The 14th was the Passover. They killed the Passover the 14th. They ate it the 15th and left the 15th. And so the 15th would have been the beginning of the feast of unleavened bread. And you celebrate this feast because your army was released from Egypt on this day. That is set in stone. Let's look at another text. Exodus 34 verse 18. The feast of unleavened bread shalt thou keep. 7 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread, as I command you, in the time of the month Abib, for in the month Abib you came out of Egypt. Enough text to show that. And we could look at Deuteronomy 16 verse 3. You have it there. Write it down for me, please. Alright, so look at now Sukkot now. Let's see why Sukkot was celebrated. Leviticus 23 verse 41, 43 to 43. You shall keep the feast unto Yahuwah 7 days. It's important for us to understand the use of 7. Very important. So 7 is complete. And the Feast of Weeks is 7 weeks. Right? Not 7 weeks. And then, not necessarily Sabbath, and then you have your count 50 days. That is something that should go in the trash. You shall keep the feast of Yahuwah for 7 days in the year. It shall be a statute forever in your generations. You shall celebrate it in the 7th month. You shall dwell in booths for 7 days. All that are Yisra'el born shall dwell in booths, that your generations may know that I made the children of Yisra'el dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Egypt. Right? So you celebrate booths, Sukkot, tabernacles, all the same thing, because when Yisra'el was taken from Egypt, they dwelt in booths for 40 years. And that's why we are told to dwell in booths, so we can remember that our people, our forefathers, dwelled in booths for 40 years in the wilderness. There is, however, no explicit mention of why we celebrate the Feast of Weeks. There's no seem to be, well, definitely not in the Bible, any reason why, no explicit reason given why we should celebrate the Feast of Weeks. There's none. Right? No, nothing explicit as we see with unleavened bread, as we see with Sukkot or tabernacles. But there's, however, an historical event mentioned in one of our the so-called extra biblical books, called the Book of Jubilees. And we are thankful to Yahuwah that the book was, and other books were preserved. And so that we could get additional information. So both Jubilees and Enoch give us a better understanding of this feast. For so, to see what it is really about. So let's look at Jubilees. Jubilees 16, 17. He set up a bow in the cloud for a sign of the eternal covenant. Watch carefully now. He set a bow in the cloud for a sign of the eternal covenant, that there should not again be a flood on the earth to destroy it all the days of the earth. For this reason it is ordained and written in the heavenly tablet that they should celebrate the Feast of Weeks in this month, once a year, to renew the covenant every year. So what historical event is attached to Feast of Weeks? There was a covenant that Yahuwah made with Noah. The covenant of the rainbow, to show that I will not destroy this earth anymore with a flood. That event, we are told here. And that covenant was made on this day in history. And because that was made on this day in history, then the Feast of Weeks were told that we should observe the Feast of Weeks. For this reason, it is ordained and written on the heavenly tablets, which cannot be erased, that they should celebrate the Feast of Weeks in this month. Which month is that? Once a year. Which month is it? Anybody, quickly. The third, fourth, or fifth month? The third month. All right, we get to that. All right, we get to that. So, and these are things you should know. You should know by now. You know, these are things, nuances that we should know by now. So we can move on to more technical teachings. But know yourself. You take your time. So the Feast of Weeks, and this is another text that would debunk the man who says that you should count seven Shabbats, then count 50 days afterward. Because that would take you over into the fourth, fifth month. But Jubilees, thanks be to Yahuwah, let us understand that the Feast of Weeks is always to be observed, always to be celebrated in the third month. The issue is what date in third month? Is it the fourth or the fifth or the sixth? That's another issue to deal with. Right? But it has to be in the third month. So Jubilees, brethren. So Jubilees, let's go back to this. To celebrate the Feast of Weeks in this month once a year, to renew the covenant every year. To renew the covenant every year. So we are not seeing in this any agricultural whatever it is. So we saw in Leviticus where you do it to celebrate agriculture, you're reaping and all that. We are seeing in this text in Jubilees that is a renewal of covenant on the Feast of Weeks. And then you'll understand that the term Feast of Weeks has nothing to do with, based on the term itself, it's not about agriculture, but about covenant. Though agriculture was attached to it after Yisra'el went into the land. But based on Jubilees, the original reason was the renewal of the covenant. Alright, so all the covenant, and you'll understand that all the covenant that Yahuwah would have made with mankind, all of them were made on this day in history. All covenant. Covenant with Noah, covenant with Abraham, covenant with Isaac, covenant with this. And we'll also see that other persons make covenant between each other on this day also. So it's a covenant day. So it could be a good day for us, as those who are married, to renew your covenant with your spouses, with your partner. And to renew your covenant with Yahuwah. That the day that we look into ourselves and to see where we have gone wrong, and we have been going wrong over the year, and to renew the covenant. We see, it is on this day that Yahuwah would have made a covenant with Yisra'el on Sinai. And would have made a covenant at other places. So every year the covenant is renewed. This is what the day is about. The renewal. The foremost reason for this day is a renewal of the covenant. Yeah. Today is Covenant Day. Covenant Renewal Day. Covenant Renewal Day. A covenant setup day. It will be a good day for those who want to go into covenant with each other, wife and husband, to use this day as a nice day. Maybe there's a covenant day. Huh? So think about it. Alright, so the covenant is to be, so the Feast of Weeks is to be held in this month, the third month. once a year to renew the covenant. Look at Hebrews. So here we see that Jubilees not only just give a historical connection of the week, feast of the week, but the connection was way before Yisra'el. So before Yisra'el was, the connection of the covenant was set up. In fact, when you read Jubilee, it said that the celebration was done in heaven from the creation. There's a text. Let me see if I had missed that text. Look at Jubilee 16, verse 6, verse 18 to 22. Let's read through that. And this whole festival was celebrated in heaven. Hear the text. From the day of creation till the days of Noah. That this feast was celebrated in heaven from the day of creation. So, it is argued that it's a creation feast also. That when Yahweh had created the earth, this feast was celebrated. And I can imagine, because the first covenant that he had set up was found in Genesis. Let us make man in our own image, after our own likeness, that they may have dominion over the earth. As the first covenant that Yahweh entered in with himself. Hence, all that he is doing, and all he has done and will be doing, is based on this covenant that he has made with himself. To make man into our own image. And so he has to keep doing covenant, renewing this covenant with other persons, with Adam, with Noah, with Abraham, with Isaac, with Jacob, with David, with Solomon, with all this, because his original covenant remains to make man in his own image. And so, Jubilee 6, 18 to 22 is correct. And this whole festival was celebrated in heaven from the day of creation till the days of Noah. 26 jubilees and 5 weeks of years. You calculate that. 26 multiplied by 49 plus 5 sevens. 5 sevens, 35 years. And Noah and his sons observed it for 7 jubilees and 1 week of years. So 7 jubilees, 7 multiplied by 49 for jubilees, 49 years. So 7 jubilees, 49 times 7, and 1 week of year is 7 years. So you add that to it, you know how long Noah and his sons kept this particular feast. And they kept it until the day that Noah died. And from the day that Noah died, his sons did away with it until the day of Abraham. And we'll see in Jubilee where Abraham took on and started to celebrate this day again. And they ate blood. But Abraham observed it, and Isaac and Jacob and his children observe it up to thy days, speaking to Moses. And in thy days, Yisra'el forgot it until you celebrate it anew on this mountain, Mount Sinai, when Moses was on Mount Sinai speaking with the angel of the presence in his 40 days retreat with Yahuwah. And the angel continued to speak with Moses. And do thou command Yisra'el to observe this festival in all their generations, for the commandment unto them 1 day in the year. In this month they shall observe and celebrate this festival. For it is the feast of weeks, and the feast of first fruits. And what's that? Underline this. It is the feast. For it is the feast of weeks and the feast of first fruits. It's 2 feasts, a double feast. This feast is twofold and of a double nature. This is what the angel told Moses. It's a twofold feast, a double nature feast. What does it mean by this? It's a feast of weeks and the feast of first fruits. What do you understand from that? How is it the feast of weeks and how is it the feast of first fruits? Double nature. Dual feast, dual meaning of the feast. All right, we get to that. So the feast is twofold, of a double nature, according to what is written and engraven concerning it. Celebrate it, for I have written in the book of the first law, in that which I have written for thee, that thou should celebrate it in its season, one day in the year, and I explain to thee its sacrifices, that the children of Yisra'el should remember and should celebrate it throughout their generations in this month, one day in every year. One day in every year. So what do we get from this? So we're getting that the Feast of Weeks was celebrated in heaven from creation. We're getting that the Feast of Weeks is of double nature, two meanings. We get it from the Feast of Weeks that it is celebrated in the third month of the year, and is one day in the third month of the year, and the third renewal. And remember now we said month we mean renewal. Right? The third renewal of the year. We also get it that there is no specific date attached to the feast. That we have to count from a particular point, 50 days, not seven Sabbath, and then the day after that is, so we get 50 days. We get that. Right? So let's now look at the meaning of the word now, the meaning of the feast. So we see where the feast of unleavened bread and the feast of booths have their meanings well set in scripture. In the Bible we see it. Right? Clear, plain. So we eat unleavened bread for 7 days on a set date because you came out of Egypt and you didn't have any sourdough or no leaven to make your regular bread. So you work with unleavened bread. And so this is deliverance from bondage. Right? We suffer booth for 7 days because you dwell in booth in the wilderness for 40 years after you left Egypt. That is protection. Can you imagine you live in booth for 40 years and it's protected in booth? Protection by Yahuwah. But what about Shavu'oth? What about Shavu'oth? What about Shavu'oth? Again, look at it. Hebrew Jubilee 6:21. For it is the feast of weeks and the feast of first fruits. Feast of weeks and the feast of first fruits. So you could call it the feast of first fruit, the angel saying, and you could call it the feast of weeks. Based on what? Based on its meaning. Based on the meaning that's attached to them. There are two meanings to this feast. Because for the Feast of Weeks is the time that you renew covenant. The Feast of Weeks. 7. And Marsha did something about the 7 something ago. Do not do it over. You have 7 sevens, mean that you seal your covenant with 7, and that's why 7 is important, and 7 is used. That's why you cannot accept the teaching about you count 7 Shabbat and add 50 days to it. That's rubbish. It's 7s. It has to be 7 Shabbats. And when you have counted the 7 Shabbats, when you have completed the count, then the day after that, you celebrate the feast of first fruits. And the feast of first fruits, you do what? You bring to offer to Yahuwah the first fruit of the wheat harvest. That's first fruit, right? So this feast is twofold and is of double nature according to what is written and engraved concerning it. You must celebrate the Feast of Weeks, the Feast of First Fruit. So in Jubilees 6:21, the phrase twofold and double nature explicitly means that the holy day serves a simultaneous dual purpose. So this day serves two purposes. It's both an agricultural thanksgiving festival and a covenant renewal festival. Double nature. Thanksgiving for the agriculture and a renewal of the covenant with Yahuwah. The text itself provides, look at it, and I went to Google, so I saw what Jubilee gave us, and we said, let me see if Google will corroborate what Jubilee said. And here is what Google says. In Jubilee 6:21, this is now what Google said. The phrase twofold and double nature explicitly means that the holy day serves a simultaneous dual purpose. It's both an agricultural thanksgiving festival and a covenant renewal ceremony. Google went on to say that the text itself provides a direct context right before using those words. For it is the Feast of Weeks and the Feast of First Fruit. This feast is twofold and of double nature. This is what Google says. The two distinct layers of this holiday, it says, are broken down below. One, the physical nature of this day, of this feast, which is the Feast of First Fruit. The physical, you go and pick. You have harvested. 50 days you harvested your wheat. At the end of that time, you bring an offering of the first fruit. But that is baked as flour, baked as bread. And you bring it to Yahweh so that your whole thing can be blessed. So the harvest, it marks the successful end of the grain harvest. It is the day people offer the first fruits of the new wheat to Elohim. That's the harvest. And the meaning, it serves as a literal, earthbound thanksgiving for physical subsistence and agricultural abundance. So the first nature of the feast is physical nature, where you give thanks for bountiful harvest. The second nature is spiritual. The Feast of Weeks are covenants. This is Google now. The promise is in the book of Jubilees, this precise day is when Elohim made the rainbow covenant with Noah. It's a Google argument. It is also when Elohim later renewed the covenant with Abraham and Moses. The meaning, it functioned as an annual historical marker to legally renew Yisra'el's eternal spiritual alliance and the oath to Yahuwah. That is Google's argument. Smack in line with Jubilees. So while the Bible gave one explicit reasoning, Jubilees gave us two. In fact, Jubilees gave two. The covenant was the first. And we saw where the first reason was the covenant. It was after Yisra'el went in the land that the second reason was attached to it, the agricultural reason. And they were given that. But covenant was the first. Right? Covenant, very important. Right? Very important. This we didn't learn when we were in the other dispensation, we only told that it was about wheat harvest. Right? And we are thankful to Yahuwah that he has inspired his people to bring these things to us so we can understand and to live accordingly. And you will understand also, brethren, that the covenant meaning of this feast is more profound than the agricultural meaning. Because it means that when there was famine on the earth, when there was no agriculture, then the feast was celebrated, was observed for a covenant and not agriculture, because there was nothing there to reap. Right? So very important. We need to go away today to understand the profound meaning of the covenant. The covenant is the first, the foremost. Right? Hence the name, the Feast of Weeks, because weeks, sevens, has to do with covenant, has to do with agreement, has to do with oath. The Feast of Weeks, the term Feast of Weeks, does not carry any meaning of agricultural produce. It is a feast of first fruits that carry that term. But the original name was the Feast of Weeks, and the weeks there speaks to covenant, to speak to agreement. Very important. You have to get that, brethren. You have to get this one here. All right, so let's move on. So all covenants, as I said earlier, all covenants made by Yahuwah and mankind were made on this day in history, not sports. This day in history. All the covenants. And we see that there are other covenants that were made between two persons. And I can show you that. Were made on this day again. Alright, to show that this day is a covenant day. So we don't have any wheat to harvest in Jamaica. But we have covenant to renew. Huh? So I hope we all come here to renew a covenant. And you can look up on the internet to see how the essence those persons used to renew the covenant on this day. Do your own research and see what we can do. So let's look at some of the covenants that were made between Yahuwah and mankind. The first one we find in Jubilees, and I'm quoting Jubilees because we already know the text in the Bible. We know the Genesis text with Noah and them people. So we just stick with Jubilee now. You can read the Genesis text because we know them already. We have been reading them. Alright? Jubilees 6, 1, 4, 16, and 17. And on the new moon of the third month, Noah came out of the ark, and he built an altar on that mountain, that Mount Arak, we are told. And Yahuwah smelled the goodly savor, and he made a covenant with him that there should not be any more a flood to destroy the earth, that all the days of the earth, seed time and harvest, should never cease. Heat and cold, summer and winter, day and night should not change their order, nor cease forever. And it's important. The covenant that Yahuwah made with Noah. I want to read it again. When you listen carefully, the covenant now. I want to listen carefully because some people tell us that day changed and this changed and whatever changed and whatever changed. Nothing changed. This is the covenant. Yahuwah smelled, verse 4, he smelled the goodly savor, the scent or odor, and he made a covenant with him that there should not be any more flood to destroy the earth. That's one. That all the days of the earth, as long as the earth is around, seed time and harvest should never cease. So we'll always have seed time and harvest. Right? That cold and heat and summer and winter and day and night should not change their order or cease forever. That's it. That's a covenant. And he gave to Noah and his sons a sign that there should not be again be a flood on the earth. He set the bow in the cloud for a sign for the eternal covenant that there should not again be a flood on the earth to destroy in all the days of the earth. And for this reason it is ordained and written on the heavenly tablet that they should celebrate the Feast of Weeks in this month once a year to renew the covenant every year. So today, brethren, we are renewing the covenant with Yahweh that this earth will never be flooded again and man can be destroyed. We are renewing a covenant with Yahweh. We are being reassured that heat and cold will not change, that there will always be summer and winter, that there will always be day and night and nothing else. That is what we are doing today now. We are reassuring ourselves. Yahweh is there and He's saying to us that I am renewing that covenant with you. Hallelujah. And you could look at Genesis 8 verse 9. So that is Noah. Genesis 8 and 9. Here Yahweh making a covenant with Abraham now on this day in history. Jubilees 14, 1, 2, 7 to 13, 18 to 20. Is Abraham now. After these things, in the 4th year of this week, on the new moon of the 3rd month, the 3rd month is important, because that is where, as the month in which, or the 3rd renewal, in which the Feast of Weeks is celebrated. Mr. Murphy, what renewal are we in? You have been counting. Murphy has been our official counter of the renewal. And Deborah, what renewal are we in, sir? Are we in the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th renewal? Which renewal are we in? Based on your count. We are in the 3rd renewal. Thank you. So it would mean that our celebration of the Feast of Weeks would be in line because it is to be done in the 3rd renewal, right? Right, brethren? So those persons who would have celebrated it maybe about a month ago, they would have been celebrating in the 2nd renewal and would have been incorrect. Question? No. It was on the new moon that it came out. It came out on the new moon. But things were done after the new moon. Right. So after these things, in the 4th year of this week, on the new moon of the 3rd, the 3rd renewal, and the 3rd renewal, the word of Yahweh came to Abram in a dream, saying, Fear not, Abram, for I am your defender. Let's go through it. And thy reward will be exceedingly great. And he said, Yahweh, what wilt thou give me, seeing that I go childless? And the son of Masech, the son of my handmaid, is Damasek, Eleazar. He will be my heir, and to me thou art given no seed. He said unto him, I am Yahweh that brought thee out of the Chaldees to give thee the land of the Canaanites to possess it forever. And I will be Elohim unto thee and to thy seed after thee. And he said, Yahweh, where shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said unto him, Take me an heifer of 3 years, a goat of 3 years, a sheep of 3 years, a turtle dove and a pigeon, And he took all these in the middle of the month. See that? In the middle of the month. So on no. Watch carefully. It was on the new moon that Yahweh spoke to Abraham and said, XYZ. Huh? Abraham said, but how could this be if I don't have a boy for myself? I'm a servant, I'll get the inheritance. Yahweh said, go and get these items for a covenant for me to make a covenant. Listen carefully. Look at and he took all of these in the middle of the month. So he had a discussion with Yahweh on the new moon of the third month, of the third renewal. And Yahweh instructed him what to do to get these things. The text says clearly he took these things in the middle of the month. So though they have a discussion on the new moon, he went and did the covenant in the middle of the month. So that's what you need to watch. So look at the context, which is important. It's a similar thing. It was on the new moon of the third month that Noah left the ark. But the covenant was done in the month, in the the lunation, we call it. The feast of the good question, is it on a full moon? Not all the times. Because, and this is the reason we are saying to you that there is not a date attached to it. If it was always on a full moon, I am thinking, then a date would have been attached to it because, the full moon falls the 15th, 14th or 15th. 15th, you understand me? So a date will be attached. What we are seeing is that it can fall in the middle of the month. It maybe can fall on the 16th or on the 14th. Because based on the count from where, and remember now that the moon comes in 3 days late every year. So it's based on the moon that you do the counting. Right? Very important. Because if there was a specific date to it, so don't you say that it was done in the middle of the month here, it's based on the count on the moon, where it fell in the middle of the month. But you'll see in other texts that I'll show you that the feast fall on the 14th at one point, and on the 16th at one point of the new moon. So the date changes based on the count we start to count from. Are you following me? Right? So here we saw where Moses now, Abraham, took all these in the middle of the month, and he dwelt at the oak of Mamre, which was in Hebron, and he built an altar there and sacrificed these in the middle of the month. And he poured out their blood upon the altar, divided them in the midst, laid them over against each other. This is found in Genesis. But the bird he divided not, and the birds came down upon the pieces, and Abraham drove them away. This is in Genesis. And did not allow the birds to touch them. And it came to pass when the sun had set, that an ecstasy fell upon Abraham, and lo, an aura of great darkness fell upon him. It's in Genesis. And it was said unto Abraham, know of a certainty that thy seed shall be strangers. So it goes there. And Yahweh made a covenant with Abraham, saying, to thy seed will I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates, the Kenites, and all the ites. Alright? And the day passed, and Abraham offered the pieces of bird, and their fruit offering, and the drink offering. And the fire devoured them, and on that day we made a covenant with Abraham. This is the angel of the present talking to Moses while he was on Mount Sinai on his 40 days retreat with Yahuwah, preparing him for Yahshua to go into the land. And we made a covenant with Abraham according as we had covenanted with Noah in this month. And Abraham knew the festival and ordinance for himself forever. So here we are told, the angel of the said, the same covenant we made with Noah, and the same day that made with Noah, we make it with Abraham. And Abraham renewed this festival and ordinance for himself forever. So every year, Abraham would have renewed this covenant, would have kept this festival, would have kept this feast forever. Once he started it, he never stopped. And we saw it in Jubilees, where he said that he kept it for how many years. And then Joshua kept it, and then they forget it. And they start to drink blood. Another thing that is attached to this covenant, brethren, is that we will never drink blood. So we'll never eat blood. We'll never eat meat with blood in it. Now you kill the animal, the blood must be fully drained out. Because the blood is a life. And you don't want to drink some bodies that some things, some life. Very important. Right? Very important. So that's the covenant that was made, Yahweh made with Abraham in the middle of the month, on this day in history. You go to Jubilees 15, we see Yahweh made another covenant with Abraham. This thing is not moving. Please assist. Jubilees 15. And in the 5th year of the 4th week of this Jubilee, in the 3rd month, in the middle of the month, again the middle of the month, showing a consistency where the feasts fall between the 14, 15, 16, somewhere in the middle of the month there. So I think the word middle of the month doesn't really mean on the 15th. Because 15th, because the new moon doesn't run for 30 days. So 14, 15, something that somewhere in the middle there. Right? Somewhere in the middle. In the middle of the month, Abraham celebrated the feast of first fruits of the grain harvest. And he offered new offering on the altar, the first fruit of the produce unto Yahuwah, an heifer, a goat, a sheep on the altar as a burnt offering unto Yahuwah. Their fruit offering and their drink offering he offered upon the altar with frankincense. And Yahuwah appeared unto Abraham and said unto him, I am Elohim, approve thyself before me, and be thou perfect. I will make my covenant between me and you, and I will multiply exceedingly. And Abraham fell on his face, and Elohim spoke with him. And his name would have been changed under this covenant. Right? So that is it. And we find this text elsewhere. Here we see where Yahuwah make this covenant again with Yisra'el again in the 3rd month. Again on this day in sport. In history. It's a big sport in anyhow. Exodus 19, verse 1, 10, 11, 16. In the 3rd month, when Yisra'el were gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day came they into the wilderness of Sinai. The same day. Which day they left Egypt again? 15th. And in the 3rd month, the same day that they left Egypt, the 15th, they reached Sinai. 15th again. And Yahuwah said to Moses, come up to the mountain, sanctify the people. Because tomorrow we are going to do a covenant. Right? Very important. And it came to pass in the third day in the morning, that there were thunder and lightning and thick cloud upon the mountain, and the voice of the trumpet exceedingly loud, and so all the people that was in the camp, they trembled. The covenant again was made on this day in history, in the third month, based on the count. And that is why a date was not given, because it's based on your counting from a particular time. And so it falls in different day, somewhere in the middle of the month. If it was a special day, I am thinking, then a date would have been given. If it was a particular day. Again, we look at that. Jubilees 1 and 2. This is not Jubilees that count. It came to pass in the first year of the Exodus of the son of Yisra'el out of Egypt, in the third month, on the 16th day of the month. A date is given there now. So we heard about the middle of the month. We are now in about the 16th day now. So in the third month, on the 16th day of the month, that Elohim spake unto Moses, saying, Come up to me and mount, and I'll give you 2 tablets of stone, of the law and the commandment, which I have written, that thou mayest teach them. And Moses went up in the mount of Elohim, and the glory of Yahuwah abode there on Sinai in a cloud. That's the 16th day that he went up, but he would have spoken to Yisra'el the day before to deal with the covenant. It's all there. There's a text that shows that Jacob and Laban had covenanted on this day in history also. Jubilees 29 verse 5 and 7. In the 7th year of the first week, Jacob turned his face towards Gilead in the first month, and on the 21st thereof. And Laban pursued after him. This is when Jacob left Laban, and packed up his wives and his children and his flock and everything, and run away behind Laban's back. And Laban followed him. In the first month, he followed him. And Laban pursued after him and overtook Jacob in the mountain of Gilead. In the third month, he catch him up. In the third month. And on the 13th thereof, and on the 15th of those days, Jacob made a feast for Laban and for all who came with him. And Jacob swore to Laban that day, and Laban also swore to Jacob that day, that neither should cross the mountain of Gilead to the other with evil purpose again. Very interestingly, that they met up on one of those, the day of covenant. The day of covenant. The famous Pentecost event in the New Testament occur on this day in history, the renewal of covenant. You see it in Acts 2 verse 1 to 4. You see that there. King Asa led Yisra'el to a nationwide covenant renewal with Yahuwah. A revival of the covenant. We saw it. We see this in 2 Corinthians 15 verse 9 to 15. And he gathered all Judah and Benjamin and the strangers that were with them out of Ephraim and Manasseh and out of Simeon. And they fell to him out of Yisra'el in abundance. So they gathered themselves together, verse 10, at Jerusalem in the third month, on the 15th year of the reign of Asa. And they offer unto Yahuwah the same time of the spoil which they had brought, 700 oxen and 7,000 sheep. And they enter into a covenant to seek Yahuwah Elohim of their father with all their heart and with all their soul. And whosoever would not seek Yahuwah Elohim of Yisra'el would have been put to death, whether small or great, whether man or woman. And they swear unto Yahuwah with a loud voice, and with a shouting, and with trumpet, and with cornet. And all Judah rejoiced at the oath. for they had sworn with all their heart, and sought him with all their desire. And he was found of them, and Yahweh gave them rest. Again, this day in history, Asa would have led Yisra'el, Judah, into covenant, because they would have stopped keeping the feast. They would have stopped keeping Sabbath. They would have turned away. And Asa realized what had happened, and he brought them back into covenant. Right? To that day of shout. Where is it? The shofar. To shout and to blow and to renew our covenant with Yahweh. That we will do what you have commanded us to do. And we will not accept or do anything that is not commanded by you. This is the day for that. So to get to the thing next year, you don't show for no whatever, no excitement. Come before Yahweh to renew the covenant. It's a day when we reassure ourselves that we will be like Yahweh. We will be like him. Alright, so we're coming down nicely. Huh? So the next argument now, when is the feast to be observed? Now this is the problem thing now. Because there's no date that's attached to it. We now have to look at the command. And even the command is there as to what to do. There are issues as to when to start the count. When to start the count. And there are three groups of persons that have three different times to count, start the count. Right? 3 different times. And you wonder why didn't Yahweh give us a date? I don't know. No, because a covenant and a 7 deal with covenant. 7 deals with covenant, my brethren. So we have to have the 7th thing counted. Because maybe if you give a date, it might fall out to the 7th Shabbat plus the 1 day. Follow? So you need the 7th Shabbat to complete the thing. So let's look at what is happening now with this count now. Look at the text. Look at the text here now. So unlike all the other feasts and appointed time, the Feast of Shavu'oth has no set date attached to it. Its celebration is determined by the counting from another event. So there's an event that happens in the first month. You must start to count from that event. The day after that event should start to count. And it's called the bringing of the Omer or the sheep, the wave offering, whose date is also ambiguous. So look at the command now in Leviticus 23, 15, 16. You shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, the Shabbat. Count unto you from the morrow after the Shabbat, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Shabbats shall be completed. 7. So when should we start the count? The morrow after the Shabbat, which is the day that you bring the sheaf of the wave offering. How when that? 7 Shabbat. So we have to know when is wave sheaf. But 3 different groups, 3 different arguments, give us 3 different days. Which one do we stick to? Which one do we use? Is the question. On the morrow, after the Shabbat, from the day that you bring the wave sheaf, that is the instruction given. You must find, so either Shabbat, and the day after that Sabbath would have been the first day of the week, the first day after the Sabbath, the day that you bring the wave offering, and that will be the day you want to count. That's the day. So count now 7 Shabbats after that day. That is where the argument comes in. Look at Deuteronomy 16, verse 9. 7 weeks shall thou count unto thee. It is set. It is not 7 weeks and then 50 days. 7 weeks shall thou count unto thee. Begin to number the 7 weeks from such time as you begin to put the sickle to the corn. At the time when you first cut the barley, the corn. Thou shalt keep the feast of weeks unto Yahweh thy Elohim with a tribute of freewill offering of thine, which thou shalt give unto Yahweh. So, you must start the count, 7 weeks count, from the time you put the sickle, when you cut the first piece of barley, and you bring that barley, present it to Yahweh, wave it, it's called a wave sheaf, and that's the day you start to count 7 Shabbats. It sounds easy, but there's controversy as to when you do the waving. So let's look at it now. The 3 factions, factions are 3 groups of persons who argue over the timing of Shavuot. The Pharisees, the essence, and the Sadducees. The other 3 persons, 3 of them have 3 different times to get the interpretation of the morrow after the Shabbat. The question is which Shabbat? Alright, so let's look at them quickly now before we lock down the thing here. So look at the Pharisees. The Pharisees says now. So the Pharisees argue that Shavuot is to be counted from the first day of the feast of unleavened bread. The Pharisees, which they designated as a Shabbat. Let me drop this. Let me have a little thing here for you. So based on the Pharisees' calculation, they said you must start the count from the day of from here. So this, what is this? This is the first day of the feast of unleavened bread that they say is a Shabbat. Right? So you must start count from here. This is it. So this will be the morrow after the Shabbat. The morrow is the 16th after the Shabbat. So we have Pesach the 14th. The 15th is the first day of unleavened bread, which they say is a Shabbat. So the morrow after the Shabbat would have been the 16th. So they start counting from the 16th. Because they say that this day is a Shabbat. And you'd say it also. Alright? Is this day a Shabbat? Is the 15th, is the first day of the Shabbat day? Huh? Answer no? What do you say? Is that Shabbat? Where do you find that? In what text do you find that in? What text do you find that in? Can you find a text in the scripture that says that the first day of the is a Shabbat? I have not found a text to say that. I found a text that says that you must not do any work on it on that day. And that's a holy convocation. So if you're going to have a holy convocation, you can't do no work, obviously. Alright? So the text in Leviticus 23 says, you should do no work thereof, you should have a holy convocation. It does not say that that day is a Shabbat. It does not say that. It also says that the 7th day, the 21st of the month, is a day that you should not do any work, you should have a holy convocation. It does not say that it is a Shabbat. So find and show me now. What caused us to assume it? Because we are doing the work on it. So we think, well, because there's no work in the Shabbat. So if I decide I'm not going to work on Monday tomorrow, then it's a Shabbat. No. It's a day that don't work. Shabbat is a day of rest. It's an appointed day that you do no work. That is set by Yahuwah. And remember now what the word is? Shabbat. That comes from the root word. What? Where it comes from? Shabbat, 7. And that is why you have the 7th day. The Shabbat is on the 7th day. 7. And then you have what is the yearly Shabbat again? What year is it? It is Shabbat. Every 7 years. So Shabbat has to be 7. Some 7 something. Right? But important. Important. Right? The 15th, the first and last day, the 15th and 21st day are day of no work. Okay, you cannot have a holy convocation and go work same time because you have to gather for the thing. Right? The first and the last day of the feast, the first day of the feast of Tabernacle is a day they do no work, but the text does not say that it is a Shabbat. But you should do no work because you should have a holy convocation. Look it up. And then now, so the first day of unleavened bread of Tabernacle is a day of no work. And then on the 8th day, not the 7th day, not the 7th day, as in this case. So in unleavened bread, the first day is no work, the 7th day is no work. In Tabernacle, the first day is no work, the 7th day is a work, is the 8th day is no work. The only appointed time apart from the Shabbat that was designate a Shabbat is what appointed time? What? You need a text. You need to read the text carefully. What? Atonement. Atonement, the word Shabbat was assigned to atonement. So that is a Shabbat. The other days, no work is to be done. It's not a Shabbat. Right? So the Pharisees would say in their argument that because this is a Shabbat day, then you must count from on the morrow, which is this day. So the Pharisees would be incorrect because this day is not a Shabbat. And look how they will go wrong again now. How many Shabbats should be counted? 7. Let's say that this day is Tuesday. So Tuesday is Shabbat, they've said. What day would the 7th Shabbat fall on? Tuesday? Or Monday, whatever. Would that day be a Shabbat day? Would that day be a Shabbat day? No. You have to count 7-day Shabbat. So if the first day falls on a Tuesday and you say that this day is a Shabbat, when you count, you are to count 7 Shabbats. So if you start to count from here, this will be day 1, day 2. So next Tuesday would be the first Shabbat. But Tuesday is not a Shabbat. Tuesday is Tuesday and not Saturday. If you follow me carefully. So they would go wrong in their counting. And if you do more research, maybe I could come with it to show you how the Pharisees tried to cook up this thing here to justify their day their account from this. So they always, so for the Pharisees, they always start their account on the 16th of the month. So it means that you start the 16th of the month, then there is a date set there. There's a set date. But there's no set date based on the argument that Yahuwah gave. You count, right? Very important. Everybody understand this carefully? Anybody don't get this part here that I'm showing you? Because you can't come a feast day and come and service, and man preach and man put on, and you don't understand, you go home with the head no properly through on. I don't learn nothing. We cannot, the teacher can't come to school, prepare a lesson plan and prepare and PowerPoint, and you leave here not understanding. You have to get it, brethren. You have to understand this. So the Pharisees, they start their counting on this day, the 16th. That's the morrow of the Shabbat. Because they say this is a Shabbat day, which is not a Shabbat day. It's a day of no work. So they count from here. So their counting always starts on the 16th. But if you count, if the first day falls on a Wednesday, or a Thursday, or a Sunday, you cannot count 7 Shabbats from here because you have to count it Shabbat by Shabbat. Very important. Very important. Alright? So the Pharisees. So there are some persons who would have long time done Shavuot because they count from the day after Passover. They count from this day here. So we have Pesach, 14th. 15th is the first day of unleavened bread. And they say this is Sabbath. So the next day you start to count. And that throw you out from getting the 7 Shabbats. The next set of people now is called the Essence. Now the Essence are the ones who, they say that who wrote the Dead Sea Scroll. They're the ones who would have hidden the Dead Sea Scrolls. Hid them from being destroyed, and they are found. So all those books, the Isaiah, and the Jubilees, and the Enoch, and all the extra biblical books, and all the other books, and the Psalm, and the Proverb, and whatever, they say the Essence are the ones who hid those books in the caves so that we could not have them. Now we do more study on the Essence coming up. And the Essence, in essence, says that they say that you must start your count on a Shabbat and not on the so-called Shabbat that the Pharisees uses. So in their reckoning, the Omer offering was brought on the morrow of the weekly Shabbat and not just unleavened Shabbat. But basically, the Essence and the Sadducees, those two groups, they say that the Pharisees are incorrect because you must count the day after the real 7th-day Shabbat and not after the unleavened bread Shabbat, because the unleavened Shabbat is not a Shabbat really. That during the week of unleavened bread, there is a Shabbat that falls there. Alright? So we go to them things now. So we're going back to this. So the Essence there now, this is not a Shabbat. This is the first of unleavened bread. And this is not a Shabbat. It's a day that you don't work because of convocation. So you have to look for the next 7th-day Shabbat that falls after this. In fact, they say you must look for the Shabbat that falls after the end of the feast of unleavened bread. So they said, run the feast first, run the whole feast for 7 days, and then now when that feast is ended, then you look for the Sabbath after that. Follow? You follow? Run the feast first, because we can't have feast and feast overlap. So here is the feast of unleavened bread. When this feast is finished, this 7-day feast is finished, you look for the next Sabbath. We can fall anywhere from the 22, 23, 24. So for argument's sake, if the feast fall on a Tuesday here, when will be the next Sabbath? After the feast. So this will be Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, this is Shabbat. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbat. So the essence, we said you'll start the counting. Use this Sabbath here to start the counting. The day after that Sabbath, you start the counting. Because you'll have ended the feast of unleavened bread and now come into another thing, which is called the feast of the wave sheaf. That's what they say. But then now, the Sadducees, which agree with the essence that you must start from a Shabbat and not just have unleavened bread day of rest, no work day. They say you must look for the Shabbat within the week of unleavened bread. So they know, so this is their argument. So somewhere between these 2 days is going to have to be a Shabbat, they say. So let's say that this is Tuesday. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbat. So this 7th-day Shabbat, is the day after this Shabbat would be the 20th and the 20th. So the count starts within the week of unleavened bread. Alright? So three arguments. There are 3 arguments. One argument is that you start to count from the day after the unleavened bread, the Shabbat, because they call it Shabbat. It's not Shabbat. This is not a Shabbat day, unless it falls on a Shabbat day. If it falls on a Shabbat day, then it is a Shabbat. If it does not, then it's not. And remember now that these are the dates of the moon. The renewal. Right? Not the days of the sun. Because the sun has its 30-day period, 30 day, 31. 30 day, 31 day. 30, 31. That's the sun circulation. We're talking about the moon now, which can be different. Because the moon have them things differently. Pardon? Yes. So one, Pharisees say you start going from here. So this is Shabbat. The morrow after it is this day. And it's this day you do the wave offering. The essence says, no, you must do it. You must start it on a real Shabbat. A real Shabbat is the 7-day cycle. The 7th day is the Shabbat. But you can't do it in the middle of a feast. You can't have an apartment in the middle of an apartment. So you do it now. You look for the Shabbat after this apartment finishes. And the morrow after that, you give the wave sheep and you start the count. And the Sadducee says, no, me accept what essence says, that it must be done after a Shabbat because the text said a Shabbat. But we think it must be done on the Shabbat within the 7th-day period. Alright? That is another argument that we can go into more deeply. The Shavu'oth. Yes. Mm. Mm. Mm-hmm. All right. So okay. Right. All right. All right. So he died. So he died on let's say the Wednesday. And then now we have he would have spent the 3 days and 3 nights, and the Sunday, the first of the week, he would have. So the Wednesday. So when would have been the first day of unleavened bread? It would have been the Thursday, the 16th, and then now we have the 17th. Yeah. So he would have. So we see the wave sheet for there within the week of unleavened bread. So we would have seen that happen there, right? And then now CGI and those other places, they do the same, within the. So if Sabbath falls within the week, then you use that date, right? The essence of an argument that we're going to look at more, because they are working with a 364-day solar thing that we're going to look at more, because we're going to look at it more to see what they have to say. And there is a text. Let me look at let's move on to see what happened there. So look at what Leviticus 23, 19, 9 to 11, 15, 16 says. We go back to it. We have to understand which group now would have been the correct group. We have to do some more thing on that. Yahuwah spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Yisra'el, say to them, When you be come into the land which I give unto you, and shall reap the harvest thereof, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruit of your harvest unto the priest. And you shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah to be accepted for you on the morrow. After the Shabbat, the priest shall wave it. And you shall count unto from the morrow after the Shabbat. That's the first day of the week, the first day after Shabbat. Because that's how they count now. All they count days now, all they count the days is the first day after Shabbat, the second day after Shabbat, the third day after Shabbat. Is not Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's the first day after the Sabbath, the second day after the Sabbath. So the Sabbath was the point, the reference point. Alright, so notice, there was no Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It was the first day after the Shabbat. The Shabbat is where you end, and you start counting after the Shabbat. The first day of the Shabbat, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth day, the sixth day after the Shabbat, and then you have the Shabbat. Follow? That's how the count goes. So on the morrow after the Shabbat is the count. The morrow after the Shabbat. So on the morrow after the Shabbat, on the morrow, you shall count unto you from the morrow after the Shabbat, from the day that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering. 7 Shabbats shall be complete. You have to get 7 Shabbats. So if you start the count on the first day of unleavened bread, you now get 7 Shabbats, because that the day on the Shabbat day. You end up getting more than 50 days. Or maybe less, I don't know. So even unto the morrow after the 7th Shabbat shall you count 50 days. So he's saying you have to do 7 Shabbat, and when you do 7 Shabbat on the day after that, the 7th Shabbat, you must have 50 days in your count. That's actually 50 days. You shall offer an offering of meat offering unto Yahuwah. But, Sir Murphy, you asked the question. Which one will be correct? There are 2 texts that we have to consider in Joshua 16 and Numbers 33. You have to consider these to see which is which. Look at this text. I'm just going to give it to you, and we have to look at it carefully. The children of Yisra'el encamped in Gilgal and kept the Passover on the 14th day of the month. Is the correct date to keep it? The 14th of the month, at evening in the plain of Jericho. And they did eat the old corn of the land on the morrow after Passover, unleavened cake, and parched corn in the self-same day. Which day would they have eaten it? Which day is this? Talk to me now, man. They keep the Passover on the 14th day of the month at evening in Jericho. And they did eat the corn, the old corn of the land on the morrow. What is the morrow? The 15th. What was the command in Leviticus? Say you can't do what? Until what? You cannot eat of the new corn until the what? You bring the wave sheaf. But here we see that, but look at text now. They eat of the old corn. Which old corn do they eat of? Where old corn come from? From where? What is setting up this? They were going into Jericho. From where? Huh? Wilderness. Did they plant corn in the wilderness? Huh? So we would get old corn. What is eating in the wilderness? Manna. So where you get old corn from? To be eating old corn, because remember, you're told in Leviticus that you cannot eat of the new grain until you bring the sheaf to the priest. Huh? Different old corn in Jericho. Okay. So there's an argument, and I'm giving the argument. I'm not giving you what I think. The argument is, and we have to look at it. The argument is this: one, old was inserted into the text by the Pharisees to substantiate their argument about the when you count. Although that also is a problem, because it is the day after the Shabbat that you start counting. So old is not correct. Yisra'el would not have been eating any corn for over 40 years, because they would have been eating what? Manna and more manna, chew manna, jerk manna, baked manna, roast manna, and all manna. Right? So when they have the Passover on the 14th day, when they went into Jericho at the part of the 14th day, then they ate of the corn that was in Jericho. Because Jericho planted corn, you beat up Jericho, take out Jericho, and you start to eat. You reap the corn and eat yourself. So this would have been. So what date would this be that they eat the unleavened bread and the corn? What date? The 15th. The 15th they eat it. So it will be the 15th they eat. So one argument says that the morrow after the Shabbat, the morrow after Passover, the morrow would have been the 15th, and they actually ate it on the 15th. They ate. So they would have offered the wave sheaf from the 14th, because the 14th was a Shabbat there. That's what the argument says. You have to look at it, because we know that it is the Shabbat after that you should present it, the wave sheaf, and then you count. No, you present the wave sheaf, and then you can eat, because the commandment says you cannot eat of the new corn until you would have presented the wave sheaf. So they would have presented the wave sheaf on the morrow, which is the 15th, and then start to eat of the new corn and the unleavened cake. So they would have eaten unleavened bread or unleavened matzah. on the 15th. Alright? So this we want to look at to see how we can understand when is the time to present and to eat based on this. And manna ceased on the morrow after they had eaten the old corn, not old corn, of the land. So it's after they eat the first corn of the land, then the manna stop. But note. A man can ask the question, but they never have any, they never eat the corn in the wilderness at all, because it was 40 years of manna. So maybe this rule about don't eat until you present did not come into play yet. Follow? Yeah. One could argue that the rule of not eating of the new corn until you present the wave sheaf to Yahuwah did not come into because they must have maybe said there was no temple and no priest to present it to, and all them, so there was no, so they just eat because they are now in the land. You do the Passover, you start to eat the thing. You can't, and then once you start eating the corn now, the manna stopped. Alright? So this is an issue that text will look at when it comes to the morrow after. And there's another text that is given in Numbers 33 verse 3. And they departed from Ramesses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month, on the morrow after the Passover. The children of Israel went out with an iron and in sight of all the Egyptians. So the morrow after the Passover they're saying, is exactly the morrow after the 14th, which is the 15th. So the morrow after the Passover would have been the 15th, because the Passover is the 14th, the morrow after will be 15th. So we have to understand, what does the morrow after means? After the Sabbath. These two texts, Marsha, myself, I will look into it, and all I can look into see how that will work to understand the count, when to start the count, and all that. Because we are told, based on the text, the command, you're not to start eating until you have brought the wave sheaf. Alright? Very important. Alright, so we're going to close up. Let me see what. Close up with this day in history now, and then that is it. I have 3 texts and we finish. So now let we see this. Let's look at some other things. So we saw Abraham covenanted with Yahuwah on this day in history. We saw Noah and Yahuwah covenanted on this day of history. We saw Laban and Jacob covenanted on this day of history. We saw Yisra'el covenanted with Yahuwah on this day of history. So all covenants, right? But there are some other things that I want to highlight to you, and then we close. 3 things. What else happened on this day of history, apart from covenant? 1. Isaac was born on this day of history. This would have been Isaac's birthday. Right? And we saw that in Jubilee 16:12 to 14. And in the middle of the 6th month, Yahuwah visited Sarah and did unto her as he had spoken, and she conceived. And she bare a son in the 3rd month, and in the middle of the month, at the time of which Yahuwah had spoken to Abraham, on the festival of the first fruits of harvest, Isaac was born. This man is a real covenant baby. This. Me promise you get a boy, and you get him right on the covenant day. The covenant picnic. Alright? Maybe a good day to have a baby. You know? Think about it. Huh? Yeah, so do it in the 6th month. And get time right, you get a covenant baby. A covenant boy, a girl, whatever it is. So Isaac was born on this day in history. And Abraham circumcised his son on the 8th day. He was the first. He was the first that was circumcised according to the covenant which is ordained forever. So the man born on the covenant day and the first to be circumcised under the covenant. A real covenant baby this. Huh? The next thing on this day in history. Jacob celebrated Shavu'oth before leaving to settle in Egypt with Joseph. Remember when Joseph found his brothers and the brothers found Joseph and they, reunion, and they said, go and get my father Jacob to come and live in Egypt. And what did Jacob say? What was Jacob's attitude towards, our perspective towards going to Egypt? Jacob didn't want to go because he was told not to go to Egypt. Isaac was told, don't go down there. Abraham was told, don't go down there, don't go to Egypt. And he said, boy, I'm not going to Egypt because I have to hear something from Yahweh before we can go to Egypt. Because we are told not to go to Egypt. Alright? And look what happened now. Jubilees 44, 1 to 8. It is in the Bible also. Alright? It's in Genesis. And Yisra'el took his journey from Haran, and Yisra'el is Jacob, right? Aram house. From his house on the new moon of the 3rd month. Alright, so again now. So Jacob left on the new moon of the 3rd month. And he went on the way of the well of Oath. This is the well of covenant, Oath. And he offered a sacrifice to Elohim of his father Isaac on the 7th of this month. So he start in Levot on the 1st of the new moon, and he offered sacrifice on the 7th day of the new moon. And Jacob remembered the dream that he had seen at Bethel, and he feared to go down into Egypt. And while he was thinking of sending word to Joseph to come to him instead of me going to you, and that he would not go down, he remained there for 7 days. What this is that? 14. That's 14? 14 days. The 14th day of the 3rd new moon. Renewal. If perchance he could use a vision, he could see a vision as to whether he should remain or to go. And he celebrated the festival of the first fruit with all the grain. For in all the land of Canaan there was not a handful of seed in the land, for the famine was over all the beasts and the cattle and the bird, and also over man. So Jacob celebrates the feast with all grain. Why? Because there's no new grain. It's 7 years famine, and he must pick little grain we have there. So he used all grain and celebrated the feast of first fruit. Right? No, so hear the argument now. So Joseph said, well, get me daddy to come to Egypt. Come stay with me. Jacob said, me not going because I'm not sure. But he started out in journey on the 1st day of the new moon, the 3rd new moon, the 3rd renewal. And he reached a particular place, the well of Oath, on the 7th of the renewal. And then he waited for another 7 days, that's the 14th. And then he celebrated the feast of weeks of first fruit. So that is either the 14th or the 15th he celebrated. When I say he celebrated after he reached 7 days, you can decide. But he celebrated on, so he will have made the count and got the 50 day, the 7 Shabbats plus a day. He used old corn, old grain because no new grain about the place. 7 years of famine are gone. At least a few years may have passed. Because he went to Egypt while the famine was still in place, right? So a few years have passed, but not the full 7 years. So he said that I'm going to now wait 7 more days now. In event, Yahweh give me a vision to say, go or not to go. And then and then he celebrated the feast of festival of first fruit with old grain, for in all the land of Canaan there was no grain at all. And on the 16th, what's now? On the 16th, Yahweh appeared unto him. So he celebrated the feast, and then on the 16th, Yahweh appeared unto him. So when would be the best date, he said, in keep the feast? 15th. Yeah, 15th. So on the 16th, Yahweh appeared unto him and said unto him, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here I am. And he said unto him, I am Elohim of thy father, the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac. Fear not to go down to Egypt, for I will there make you a great nation. I will go down with you, and I will bring you up again. So I'm going to bring you into Egypt, and I'm going to bring you out again. And in this land shall thou be buried, and Joseph shall put his hand upon thy eyes. Fear not, go down into Egypt. And his son arose, and his son rose up, and his sons, and they placed their father and their possession on wagons. And Yisra'el rose up from the well of out on the 16th of the 3rd renewal, and went down to the land of Egypt. So on this day in history, Jacob celebrated the feast with all the grain, and then left for Egypt the day after, the 16th. And finally, this day in history, Judah was born. Judah and Isaac shared same birthday. Jubilee 28 verse 15. And again Jacob went in unto her, and she conceived and bare him a 4th son, and he called his name Judah, on the 15th of the 3rd month, in the 1st year of the 1st week. Another son of covenant, a covenant baby. That is the Feast of Weeks. That is the Feast of Weeks, brethren. I trust that you will have learned a thing or two. If you have any doubt of anything, then you can talk to myself or Marsha. I thank you much. You have much to learn.
O great eternal Father, Yahuwah, we have come to another year's renewal, of which we also come to learn more about the ways and the truth and the time. There's a lot for us to understand, Father. that we may do the right things at the right time, that pleasing, that we may not worship you and doing things in vain. We thank you for the knowledge that you have given to your leaders in doing their research and to educate your children. We thank you for the understanding that you have put in place, Father. Father, we thank you for this opportunity. And we ask that you now, Father, will strengthen us spiritually, that we will apply all things that will guide us to the throne, or the point, that we, O Father, will appear and not left behind by doing wrong things. But that won't help us, working in vain. Father, we ask that you will continue blessing those who you inspired to do the research, to guide us and to protect us, to lead us. Bless them spiritually, bless them physically. And Father, we ask that you will continue keep us together. Let us not go weary, but be steadfast and focused to hit the mark at the right time. And as we come to the end of this day's worship, Father, may you be with us. Strengthen us that we will stay focused, that we will appear to another renewal. Father, we thank you for keeping us, that we kept the count and not go wrong. And we end up this day, the special set-apart day, as it was being celebrated before in heaven. Father, keep us focused. Keep us, strengthen us spiritually, physically, and bless us as you see fit. As we leave this place this afternoon to go to our separate home of dwelling, go back into Babylon, may you be with us. Keep us, Father, that what we have learned we may be able to share with others, to enlighten them that there is a better way. Father, we thank you, Father. We ask for blessings. We have your mercy, Father, to keep us. These I ask of you, Father. What I fail to ask, fail not to grant unto us. To your Son, Yahusha. Hallelujah.
Thank you, Rash, for your research and presentation on this, one of our grandest feast of the year. All our feasts, our festivals are really grand, and it is to each individual to choose which is their grandest. Shavuot indeed is one of the grandest festival of the year, when we renew the everlasting, the eternal covenant that no man can rescind. And we are giving thanks to Yahuwah for still keeping faithful and true to this covenant, even though we do not keep true and faithful to the covenant. Put your hands again together for Rash. I thought I was going to be the one to present today, and when I was thinking about what to do, it came to me that Shavuot is one of those festivals that Yahuwah so strategically placed it. And if you if you look at it properly, you realize that it is actually the key to unlocking the calendar, because the fact that you were not given a date, and the dates, you have to understand that the dates are quoted using the renewal, which is the moon. And the fact that you are not given a date for Shavuot, it really shows you that you can't work with a solar calendar as many other assemblies do, because you are not given a date. You are given a period to count from and to. And it is such a special festival because it concretizes that for me, and we will look at it in the future. Rash touch on it a bit, and we'll look at it definitely in the future, so I can pull it out and show to you that Shavuot is actually the festival that makes us understand that the sun and the moon, as said by Enoch, does not operate on the same law. And our festivals are called by the moon and the moon only. Stand everyone as we dismiss. It was indeed a wonderful day to have been found in the presence of Yahuwah. And as we renew the covenant, I trust that we are all ready to go another year, trying our utmost best to stay faithful to said covenant. Yahuwah barak and shamar you. Yahuwah make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yahuwah lift his countenance upon you and give you shalom.